Hello, and a very warm welcome to a very special edition of the Store TV Live from Westbourne Terrace in London, and we have a very special guest here, John O'Keefe, the WPP Worldwide Creative Director. John, very warm welcome.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have everybody watching this from all around the world, and for the next 50 minutes or so, John and I are going to look and reflect at the most recent Cannes Creative Festival. If you'd like to ask John a question, the best way of doing that is to actually send me an email, which is droth, D-R-O-T-H, at WPP.com. And then towards the end, we'll ask John your questions. John, let's really start with the whole notion of the Creative Festival. Of course, not that many years ago, it was an advertising festival. It's clearly changed its name to reflect a difference in terms of tone. What is it about Cannes that has now become the premier creative award festival?
It's very simple. If you're in South Africa, the lorries are very important to you. The lorries are not very important to people in Nicaragua. You know, they're not very important to people in London. D&AD is massively important to people in London. The One Show is massively important to people in New York. Cannes is the only one that's hugely important to everyone. So, to that extent, it's hats off to the people behind Cannes, EMAP, for making it so global. But there isn't anyone in any aspect of marketing anywhere in the world who hasn't heard of it and doesn't want to win at it. So, to that extent, I styled it for WPP purposes as the World Championships for our industry. There are other sorts of accolades you can garner, without naming names, which kind of aggregate points that you've won throughout the year at different award shows. And I always found that slightly misleading, if you like, because an agency, for example, an advertising agency, can do one campaign, enter that one campaign for every show in the world, aggregate loads of points, and be called the most creative agency in the world on the back of a single idea. That can't happen at Cannes. Cannes is a moment in time. What have you done across disciplines this year? Let's see it against whatever else has done. And I think if you can do well at Cannes, then you're obviously doing your job well. And if you win, then you are the number one.
Well, in order to win, clearly, you need to have judges, and judges awarding work. What's actually the process? I mean, some of the way in which some of the awards work is sort of a bit of a black hole. You don't really know what goes on in terms of the way in which the judges are looking at work, the criteria they use in order to decide what work should win. How does the whole judging work within the Cannes Festival?
Well, the last time I judged Cannes, and I don't think it will have changed very much, was the 50th anniversary Cannes Festival, which was 2003 or 4, I think. And it's not dissimilar to lots and lots of other award shows. It's you get your jury. The world and its wife thinks, God, they're all very, very good people. They've got a good track record. If they think it's a great piece of work, it probably is. And then you all sit around and you have to go through a huge amount of work. I judged print that year. People judging TV, I mean, literally, it must have been 12-hour days every day for 10 days just to sort of get to see things.
And how quickly do you arrive at the shortlist? Is it easy to make that first cut?
I think it's easy to make the first cut, slightly less easy to make the second, and then by the time I remember there being a pretty major debate when I was judging it, which I was told never to talk about. So here goes.
Excellent, good. First scene on the Store TV.
Pretty universal acclaim for the overall winner. But I didn't think it should have been the overall winner. I think it should have come second, and another piece of work should have won. And I made that judgment on the basis that the other piece of work, one, it was very, very creative, which you think, well, that's a hygiene factor at that level when you're judging the Grand Prix. But also, it was for insurance, and it was a sort of a global campaign for an insurance business. And you have to I always think you have to factor in degree of difficulty. It's quite hard to do something brilliant for a global insurance company. And the other candidate was, I think, for a fly spray for one market, and it was a nice piece of work. But I just thought it's just slightly easier to do a fly spray print ad. Ho hum. But when you get to that level and a couple of rounds before that, the debate starts and people do get very passionate. And that's a very healthy thing, and the fact that I lost that debate is okay with me. I'm not the doyen of all knowledge. I just felt, as I described, but it's a pretty rigorous and tiring thing to do. So when you come away from it, you really do feel exhausted. So I think people do put in the effort.
And unlike the Oscars, I suppose there's not a great deal of lobbying going on by the various different production houses and agencies. The judges?
There isn't. I don't think there is. I think people tend to say, I don't know if all our audience are familiar with the Eurovision Song Contest, but there's always traditionally, Greece gives Turkey 0 and Turkey gives Greece 0 because they're arguing about Cyprus or something, irrespective of the song. I don't think that necessarily happens at Cannes or in most festivals. I think people do leave the baggage at the door and sit down and judge the work.
So this year there are over 9,000 delegates, a record number of entries. I think the entries were up by about 19% this year. A number of Grand Prix from countries that have never won Grand Prix before. It's a meeting house not only to decide who's going to get the Lions, but also a meeting house for creativity. And given, in a sense, the name has changed from being an advertising festival to a creative festival, what, in your experience of going to Cannes, participating in Cannes, judging Cannes for a number of years, what changes have you seen in both Cannes and, I suppose, general creativity over that period of time?
Well, the big thing happening, towards the end of the 90s was digital came in. And it was a brilliant thing to happen because it refreshed everything. Boundaries got blurred. Once upon a time it was very simple. Here's my poster, what do you think of it? Here's my TV ad, here's my radio ad, here's my press ad, and that was it. When you get into digital, film, a TV ad, you stick it on YouTube, you can enter into the digital category. This is at its very most basic. Pretty well everything, a banner, a print ad. I always said to people, very early days of digital, I want to see the banner version of every print ad you do, because a lot of print ads, whilst being very good, you can almost see the movement in a still print ad sometimes, and if in a banner it just did that one little move, it might be, altogether more wonderful. And I think when that happened, people started to sort of broaden their horizons around brands and how to approach creating the fame and the value for those brands. And I think digital opened the door for a lot of people to think even beyond digital into, what's the consumer experience at the point of purchase even, and what should the design of the store be like? Should that be consistent with our overall marketing push, our end line? Everything became sort of up for grabs, if you like, and everybody wanted to kind of have their idea extend across, as the phrase had it, every touch point. And that, I think, is a very healthy thing, and I think that's to, again, one of the reasons why Cannes is so successful is it adapted very quickly to that, and I think it's an ongoing thing. Without going into names, met a company this morning who are very interesting, who have a unique approach, and they haven't done very well at Cannes so far, simply because what they do isn't quite on the Cannes radar yet, but it will be.
There used to be, I don't know, 10 years or so, a Cannes look. You could look at a piece of communication and say, look, that had an award winner stamped all over it.
Yeah.
Has that changed? It feels like it has. It's less predictable than it was.
I think probably almost my previous answer would do this, because when it was TV, print, even radio, you could, again, like the degree of difficulty points, I started my career at Saatchi's, and we had the National Maritime Museum, we had the National Prevention of Cruelty to Children account, all sorts of charity bits and pieces that were inherently dramatic before you even started. So those sorts of things were very award friendly, was how they were being put. And then there were the big money pieces of business, which weren't very award friendly, frankly. I think, to your point, that has changed. I think there's a greater recognition among the client community now that if you're not doing it in a very creative and engaging way, you will become invisible. So to that extent, you're now seeing more awards going to, financial institutions, household goods, the big holding companies doing all the FMCGs now recognise, and have done for a decade, that they need to be just as fleet of foot as a Nike or an Adidas. So yeah, I think it's much less predictable now.
Well, before we have a look at some of the award-winning work, some of ours, some of other people's, and just a reflection, really. It's as you say, if you're judging, it's hard work. If you're meeting and greeting people, it's hard work too. A bit of fun as well. What was your best moment of the festival this year?
Well, I think my best moment was 3 years or so in the making, because it will come as no surprise to our viewers and listeners that WPP had been characterised rather unfairly, I thought, as the sort of business bean counter was often thrown at it as a criticism. And therefore, by definition, it wasn't as creative as maybe a different holding company. And as I say, I thought that was unfair because, one, what's wrong with being an incredibly well-run business? Who wants to work for a badly run business? So, the bedrock of our creative success is how well-run WPP and its businesses are. So, I just wanted to sort of rebalance that equation in people's minds. I didn't think there was a Herculean task inherent in this. I thought our businesses were fantastically creative, perhaps not as focused on Cannes as they might have been. And I think that I just wanted us to focus on it. And last year, we very, very nearly came out on top from a position the year before where we were quite a long way behind the winner. And this year, of course, we did come out on top. That's not to say that's job done, that's job begun. But the call I got at 7 o'clock, I think, on the Saturday night, for anyone who thinks it was all kind of known about days in advance, literally on the evening the awards were given out on the Saturday night, 7 p.m. I got a call to say we'd won. And as calls go...
And how did you feel? I mean, that's a nice moment.
It was a pretty nice moment.
What went through your mind at that point?
I had been in Cannes for a few days with my wife, and we were both planning to go home on the Saturday morning. And I think Martin Sorrell was going home at some point on the Saturday from some while back because he had another engagement to attend. And I'd said to him, look, if we win this and we're doing what we can, you should be there to pick it up. And I was still going to go home on the Saturday morning, and he was insistent that I pick it up. And as it turned out, we both went up to pick it up. But when the call came, you're always at that absolute moment going to think, oh, is it going to be good? And then it was. And the weight of the world, in a way, dropped off because I've been focusing on this. I've wanted to do this, and you suddenly euphoria almost turns to, I don't know, exhaustion is very too strong a word, but you think, the relief and the sigh. But after every sigh comes a deep breath, and then we're all taking a deep breath to go again for 2012. But as moments in your career go,
that's a good one.
It'll do.
It will do. Okay. So I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. So 1,219 points for WPP. 1,152 for Omnicom. I think the next one down was Publicis at less than 1,000. And WPP getting awarded a Lion for the holding company of the year. Where is the Lion?
The Lion is sitting on reception of WPP head office. We're going to get another one. Don't all get excited. We're going to get a duplicate of the one we've got.
We'll get another one next year.
We'll get another one next year, hopefully, to sit in our New York office because we want WPP, wherever it exists, to share in this. And it is indeed worth saying that there's 160,000 odd people who made their contribution to where we are. So congrats to everybody and thank you.
I think that's the most important thing. I mean, any piece of creativity is a joint effort, and in a sense, creativity isn't just the area of the creative department, is it?
No, and I think it's vindication for everything Martin has done since he began on this long and winding road to here. I think he is such an obviously talented entrepreneur and businessman. He attracts that kind of comment, and therefore those perhaps who are a little less than pleased with his success throw in the kind of, you're not very creative, are you? Well, I think, as they say, he who laughs last.
Okay, on that note, let's look at some work. We said earlier that this year a number of countries managed to get a Grand Prix for the very first time.
Yeah.
And in fact, our first award winner comes from one of those countries, so it comes from China. It was created by JWT Shanghai, awarded the Grand Prix for print, and the client was Samsung. Do you want to talk a little bit about the work?
Well, the work, it goes without saying, is fantastic. It's a print ad, and it's won the Grand Prix. So to say it's a fantastic print ad is fairly redundant. It would be, wouldn't it? What's important, and what is an inflection point, not only for WPP but for China, is that China has won the print Grand Prix. I suspect next year we will see China across all groups mounting a really, really major creative challenge to the world, because you create momentum with things like this. I'm hoping that certainly JWT Shanghai and all our companies will look at this as a kind of a beacon, something to say, we've arrived. I remember, as I said, I judged it whenever it was 2002, 3, 4, whenever, and there was Chinese work there, and people just didn't understand it. I remember thinking it looks beautiful, but I don't read Chinese script Mandarin, but it looked stunning, but it didn't win anything, and I think there was a bit of, in the most delicate sense, sort of Western European, North American kind of, well, obviously we're going to win the stuff, so let's be polite, but now let's get back to the real job of looking at what we've done. I think those days are now long gone. I think the emerging economies, it seems to go hand in hand. The strong economies like India and China and Brazil. We saw fantastic work coming out of South America.
Is that because of a an innate sense of confidence in that market that actually reflects itself in creativity?
I suspect so. It's not something I've studied. My observation is those economies that are, known as the BRICS and the next 11. A lot of those markets historically you wouldn't have necessarily looked out for in the creative shows. You look out for them now, and I think there must be something that people have said. London in particular, the UK didn't do very well. Well, perhaps the opposite is true. We are austerity Britain at the moment, and maybe confidence is low and clients are getting more conservative and procurement is having an ever greater say in things. Nothing wrong with procurement, but in times of great optimism and confidence and everyone feeling financially flush, I guess, the work tends to be better.
I think one of the things that I really love about this Samsonite piece of work is it has its origins in just a wonderfully simple thought and piece of insight, which I think anybody who travels can empathise with, and it's just very dramatically brought to life. That's almost a speech you could make about any award winner. There'll be some nugget, some kernel of truth that just to evidence that truth wouldn't be enough, but to find the clever, smart, engaging, new, never seen it before way to tell you that thing that you kind of knew already but hadn't really thought. That's the sort of, if you had to try to write the formula to how to win an award, that would be pretty well it. And this ad demonstrates that. And when you stare at that blank piece of paper, when you're initially given a creative brief, what is it that goes through your mind as a creative in terms of, how do you get from A to B? I mean, it's pretty daunting. There's that blank piece of paper, and you're expected to create.
Yeah, and these days more likely a blank screen.
Yeah.
But the point is the same. Firstly, you will have wanted to be in that position. You will have set out on your career path to find yourself working for a big agency, design, advertising, whatever, with, metaphorically, I guess these days, the magic markers and the blank piece of paper, because you will have believed in your ability to come up with a clever, witty, engaging way to demonstrate a point. So, I mean, there are times where a week has gone by and the blank bit of paper is still just as blank as it was a week ago, and it's tough, and you get experience and you can sort of get something done and it'll be good enough. But there are, hopefully more and more those moments where you've hit pay dirt, you've done something fantastic, and then you really, really need to rely on, as you say, we are a team. You need to rely on others to be the great persuaders. You need to rely on fantastic strategists to demonstrate to clients why this is the right thing to do. But, as to precisely what goes between each synapse in your brain as you're holding your pen, if I could tell you that, I'd bottle it. Okay,
let's move on to the second piece of creative work, which is by Y&R in Bangkok. It won gold for the outdoor category. It's quite an intriguing outdoor category because it's not the conventional poster outdoor. It's much more involving outdoor.
Yeah, it's again that point about how it's evolving. Once upon a time it would be a 48-sheet poster, a giant print ad with less copy. But now outdoor means the moving image, an installation, if you like. But again, it's how do you demonstrate something as, in one sense, mundane as we've got a microwave that will cook quickly, and to sort of take an aquarium and as you're looking at it, the fish swim by already cooked. It's a sort of a clever little mind trick that says that's how quick it was. I don't know if we can see it on the run, but it's it borders on the disturbing at times, but it's quite funny.
Okay, so let's take a look.
I agree, there's certain bits that are very disturbing.
But yeah, not certain I want to see that fillet of salmon swimming all by itself without any fins.
Well, it's a bit of fun, and the point about it worked, so fair play to them.
Okay, let's take a couple of questions as we've had them on the fly. Interesting question we've had on the relationship between, you talked a little bit about how digital was becoming, I suppose, more mainstream. Which agencies are grasping this? Is it the new digital agencies, or is it the traditional agencies? So who's going to win out in the long term?
I don't really like to think about it in terms of winning and losing here, because I think the winner will be the idea. And digital agencies have been around long enough now for us not to consider them to be some sort of phenomenal new thing. And traditional agencies have brought digital skills in-house for the most part so long ago now that you can't really call them traditional agencies as though they don't do digital. There's no such thing as a non-digital agency. I do think there was, at the outset of the, if we want to call it the digital revolution, a sense of there being the keys to a new kingdom that we didn't know how to operate. There were people who were technologically very, very adept. They knew how to write code, if you like. They could design websites. And I guess some people got caught in the headlights and panicked a little bit. But I mean, that's kind of, hygiene. You could say, if you were just doing a poster, I don't know how to, make the sheets that go on a 48 sheet poster site. I don't know what kind of glue they use to put it up, but I could write you an idea. And I think in the end, the best digital stuff is like the best any stuff. It's just, a clever idea. Digital allows you to expand on what you can do with an idea, but there will be at its core a clever piece of thinking.
So in answer to the question from Marcus, who are actually one of our newest members of the group, Schultz and Friends in Germany, so a very warm welcome to everybody at Schultz. Is it the idea or the technology that's going to win out? It's clearly the idea.
Yeah, I think because the technology will just become the hygiene of how people go about their daily business. And if you haven't got a very, very clever, insightful idea, the Samsonite heaven and hell, you could see that being a fantastic film. You could see it working, therefore, online or anywhere else. It's just a very, very clever idea.
Okay, let's move on to our next award winner, and this comes from...
Just before we do that.
Okay, let's not do that then.
That's a tip, by the way, for JWT Shanghai. Make the Samsonite film based on the print ad and enter it next year.
Excellent. That's another Grand Prix, almost on the shelf, waiting for you to collect next year in Cannes. Okay, so off to Ogilvy, to Buenos Aires, which won a silver in the direct category, and it's called Spread the TED.
Yeah.
Who is TED?
Well, TED is... I'm glad you asked me that. It's
like an online
it's kind
intellectual
of, yeah,
community.
it's just a creative ideas community, very, very democratic. People can come along and they have festivals and people can stand and talk about their particular idea and the audience will respond in however they want to respond. So it's, and they've embraced our community just as we've embraced theirs. They do ads worth spreading. And as we're on the subject of Ogilvy, I think Ogilvy, South Africa did an AIDS awareness film last year called Selena, which was absolutely fantastic. And in the TED ads worth spreading, I think it got more votes than anyone else in the world and was the number one ad worth spreading over the past year. So,
and of course, Ogilvy did exceptionally well.
Ogilvy did fantastically well at Cannes this year, and it's worth saying, Ogilvy South America, as they say, knocked the ball out of the park. It's just phenomenal how well they did. So it's good to be talking about them and their work now. And this TED idea was, how do we, as you've seen me describing TED, they wanted to make the people aware of TED and the festival and what it was all about. And how were they going to do that? And, as is often the case with brands, you can get a brand spokesman. A famous one, would be handy, although I've seen some research saying a famous spokesperson doesn't really add anything at all. But what they did, what Ogilvy did, was they took local cab drivers. And they briefed local cab drivers because, as everybody in the world knows...
They know everything about everything.
Well, and you get in a cab, unless you specifically tell them not to talk because you're busy, they will tell you everything in the world ever. And all these cab drivers just discussed TED, and it was a phenomenal success and a brilliant idea, and no wonder it won an award.
Okay, let's take a look at it now.
TED is a non-profit organization devoted to ideas worth spreading. TED offers inspiration from the world's most inspired thinkers to a global community. But in Latin America, this community is still far away from common people. So how can we find a more popular approach between TEDx ideas and the common citizens? We call the city most remarkable speakers.
Carlos, Mario, Willy, Bruno, Cacho, Aito, Gustavo, Mónica, ¡Cumbia!
We invited 50 taxi drivers to the TEDx Buenos Aires conference. Taxi drivers inspired by 6 hours of ideas worth spreading. Then we let them do what they do best. Talk.
Buenas tardes. Ayer participé de un evento que se llama TEDx. TED mayúscula X.
¿Sabés lo que es TED?
No, TEDx es una organización sin fines de lucro. A nivel internacional, ¿no? Tratando de difundir ideas innovadoras, ideas nuevas.
Hubo 2 chicos que tuvieron una experiencia en Guatemala.
Y ver si se puede vivir con $1.
We spent just $56 each in 8 weeks.
La que más me llamó la atención fue una de Mario Benedetti, que es un investigador del CONICET, La máquina de Dios, no sé si la escuchaste nombrar.
En Estados Unidos desarmaron una Toyota 4x4 y armaron las incubadoras.
Una conectividad en el mundo. José Hernández, ¿hasta dónde seguimos?
Tenemos como el rol en este evento de difundir.
Voilà.
Well, we've just done to taxi drivers what we
can't do in reality, which is just turn them off when they've gone on for slightly too long. But I think you get the point. And time's moving on. We'll circulate the URLs where you can watch and download copies of these ads a little bit later on. We'll email those to you. So let's move on to a charity. You talked about charities being good fodder for Cannes Awards in the past.
I don't think I quite used that phrase.
Well, no, I paraphrased it for you.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really interesting idea because I think it moulds two things together. It moulds everybody's desire now to have something that's unique, a technology to enable you to do that, and doing good for good causes.
Well, it covers off a number of questions. This because is it digital or is it the idea? And this kind of blurs that question into one thing. It couldn't, or it'd be difficult to do it without the technology. But the point of this is, what they did was, and it's the Partners design company, fantastic design business in London, regular winners at Cannes. And this is a wonderful charity called the Richard House Hospice. And as is the nature of any charity, they need to raise funds. So what the Partners did was design this website where they got lots and lots of famous artists to either draw a head or a body or legs. And then you can go onto the website, and because there are so many artists, each doing a head, a body or legs, there's almost an infinite number of finished images you can come up with. So you can create your own unique piece of art, which you can then buy. And that's how they raise the money. But so many charities are simply saying, look at this terrible situation we have to deal with, please send us some money. It's so much more refreshing to say, here's this fantastic thing you can play with, here's some art you can create for yourself. There's a reward in it. And I think, another part of the whole digital revolution when they talk about paid for and earned media and the need to reward the consumer, it's much more in that mode. It's much more kind of 21st century, I guess. There's no reason unless you can give me a reason to stay on your website and reward my attention. Why would I? There's a million other things I could be doing. So, it's a fantastic answer and a fantastic solution to the problem of raising money for Richard House Hospice. So, another fantastic gold for the Partners. I fully expect to see the Partners picking up further golds in the years to come.
Have you bought anything from it?
I have actually, yeah. But not sure my wife thinks my choice of
your combination
choice of the body parts was necessarily the best.
She can go on site and create one
can,
herself.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose we're one mighty leap. We go from charities to FMCG, which traditionally has had quite a hard time creating campaigns that have done well creatively, I suppose, or in the award community, in the refined arena of awards. And I think this is, again, a fantastic example of a cracking piece of insight, dramatised in a really interesting way. And this is a silver from Gray in New York for these.
It's almost one of those ones where we should see it and then talk about it, I think, because it's a much more...
Okay, Alex, can we see it?
We asked real people if they'd help us with an experiment for Febreze Set and Refresh. They agreed.
Open it up. You can just go ahead about 7 or 8 steps. Right there is perfect. Okay. Just relax.
Take a few slow, deep breaths. Yoga breaths. Let me know what you smell.
There's a freshness, watermelony, but a little bit tart. Clean, like a Macintosh apple.
Just smell apples and pears.
Cider, scarecrows, pumpkins.
Come on.
I smell apples. Reminds me of Mother's Day.
I guess I could be in Spain.
We're at a really nice posh resort.
Seems very spacious.
Makes me feel hungry.
Okay, go ahead and take your blindfolds off.
No
Febreze Set and Refresh eliminates odors so you can breathe happy.
So, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it speaks for itself. It's a brilliantly simple idea. But the bigger point is, 10 or 15 years ago, I suspect Febreze wouldn't have done that or felt the need to do that. A very successful product, a very successful brand. But the world has moved on now where, detergents and fabric softeners and air fresheners and absolutely everything else exists in a world where everybody wants your attention. And if you don't make an effort creatively, then you will disappear. Thankfully, Febreze have got Grey in New York, fantastic agency, and they've delivered this brilliant piece of work, and it's one of a campaign based on a fantastic insight about, if you can smell lovely fresh things, your mind will see a different world, and it's just an amazingly clever insight. When they lift the blindfold to discover where they are, and as I say, there are others you could look at. It's such. You can imagine the difficulty of demonstrating fragrance on television, but what a brilliant idea.
As you go through that idea, you almost start to smell what she smells, as opposed to see the smells that you're seeing, in a sense. So.
And that's the consumer response, and yet the person in the film is seeing, beautiful, fresh imagery of a wonderfully upmarket hotel, despite evidently being where they are. So, it just works.
Okay, and lastly, I think, and then we'll just have to wrap up, the Diesel campaign. And the Diesel campaign won a film silver for a campaign as opposed to an individual piece of creative work. We're just going to show one example of that. Why do you think this did so well?
I think it's a crowded market, and you're making jeans, and actually, I worked for many years on Levi's, and a technology brand, a tablet, an iPod, an iPad, one of those sorts of things, there's lots of stuff you can talk about. There's loads of depth and texture. Look at what it can do. A pair of jeans is 100% cotton workwear, effectively. It's overalls for painting the kitchen. When you take something like that and try to imbue it with texture and depth and personality, especially in a world that's had many years of successful advertising for both Wrangler and Levi's, and you're coming in called Diesel, you need to create an entire kind of universe for yourself. And this whole Stay Stupid platform, I think, I dare myself sometimes think, if I were the creative director and the team came in and said, we've got this idea, it's called Stay Stupid, would I have seen the brilliance of it? And of course the answer is yes. Naturally, but the proof of the pudding, it's a brave, brilliant client and a really smart agency, and those of a nervous disposition look away now, but I think it's fantastic work.
Alex, let's scare the nervous people watching.
Hey fellow pioneers, it's time to go to sleep on Diesel Island. So grab your pillow, kiss your friends goodnight, and go to bed to hear today's lullaby. Here we go. We have had a busy, so busy day. We built a house with our own hands, chosen a goat to be our pet. We said a prayer for Pirate Bay. We had a busy, so fucking busy day. We saved a gypsy from an angry French. We mailed the Pope and tried to convince condoms are great, not what he thinks. Today was busy, now I'm so tired. Tomorrow we have to disarm a weapon of mass destruction and find an end to slavery in Asia. So we better go to sleep. We know that tomorrow's world will still be shit, but we hope we can make it a bit better from Diesel Island. Night night.
John, thank you very much indeed. We've almost come to the end. What finally would you say? I mean, this year's Cannes Festival finished. Next year's we're starting to think of, and as you've said, you had a 5-year journey when you joined WPP in terms of overall creativity. What message would you give to all of us, all WPP employees around the globe about the coming year, creativity, the challenges?
Well, the challenges will be daily, and they won't end at Cannes next year. You know, it's why we're in the business. You know, wouldn't life be dull if it was other? So I want everybody to remember that we are all part of the most creative marketing organisation in the world, and the monkey is off our back. This "you're the bean counters and they're the creative ones" thing has gone. You know, we are as good as we always knew we were. So my thanks go to everybody firstly, as I've said, and my hopes and wishes and prayers and encouragement for a fantastic 2011-2012, because this isn't a blip. This is the new reality. Let's make sure in 2012 everybody understands that.
Thank you very much indeed. And you can actually probably look at quite a lot of the work that was submitted to Cannes and to other award competitions around the world through a new app.
Yeah, the Whipped
called
Cream.
The Whipped Cream app.
Whipped Cream. WPP Cream. It's a real eye-opener for anyone, and clients included, particularly in a way, because, you know, we need to keep on evangelising for what we do and how good we are. And the Whipped Cream app, and indeed the Whipped Cream book, have got all the best work that's across all the WPP disciplines annually. The Whipped Cream app, if you download it, you can show anyone you like films from anywhere in the world, digital, print, everything. So I would commend everybody to download the WPP Whipped Cream app.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed. I see the grim reaper of time at the door. We've run out of time now. Thank you very much indeed for watching, and a big thank you to John for being with us. All it leaves me to say from David Roth from WPP and all of us here, thank you very much indeed for watching. To learn how WPP can help you in all aspects of retailing, from insight right the way through to activation, please send me an email at david.roth@wpp.com. And to watch any more of these video broadcasts, just log on to the Store TV website at thestorewpp.com.
WPP.tv.